I call this meeting of the Davenport Community School District Board of Directors to order. Director Snyder, would you please read our vision statement?
Education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and the community to answer the question, what if?
Thank you. We'll move on to the showcase. Superintendent Tate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll call on Dr. Cindy Lewis, Buchanan Principal. Thank you for being here tonight, Cindy.
Thanks for having us. Good evening, Dr. Tate, directors, Mr. Schnaden, Mr. Scott, and guests. I'm Cindy Lewis, and this is my second year as principal at Buchanan Elementary School. The focus of our work at Buchanan is student learning, especially in the areas of reading and math. Our vision is to create an environment where adults and children demonstrate respect, responsibility, and readiness to the task. Last year it became evident to our staff that we needed to get to work to create and to maintain a school environment where positive behaviors were modeled and taught and expected. So we began collecting student behavior data. We put some initiatives in place, and we began to measure growth. I'm here tonight with Rachel Ivory, who is Buchanan's School Administrative Manager, Becky LaFrenz, 5th grade teacher, and Valerie Pennick, kindergarten teacher. These building leaders and I have taken an active role in this positive behavior initiative, and we are here to tell you about it. Also joining us tonight are representatives of our loyal Buchanan staff, sitting here behind me, parents, and friends of Buchanan. And I just want to thank them for their support as well.
Good evening. My name is Rachel Ivory, and I'm the School Administrative Manager at Buchanan. This is my second year there as well. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the data that drove our decision to go ahead and implement our BARC initiative. Our first quarter office referrals in 2012, we had 92. Second quarter office referrals, we went up to 101. Third quarter, we went up to 239, and then fourth quarter, we went up to 266. So that was a total office referrals of 698 for one school year. So it was an increase of 153%. So we just felt that that was unacceptable. So we looked at how much class instruction, lost instruction that was. So we averaged about 20 minutes of students being out of class for us to get them settled and back to class. So that was about 33 hours of lost instruction that the students had last year. So we decided that we really needed to put something in place to help our students be successful. So since implementing our BARC behavior initiative, first quarter office referrals have decreased by 26 referrals. So we've gone down from 92 first quarter of last year to 66 this quarter. So that's a 28% decrease. So we are seeing improvement in our student behaviors. One of the things attributed to that is at the beginning of the year, you have in your binders there, we asked our teachers to fill out a classroom expectations, which lists their classroom expectations for the classroom, and then also individual classroom rewards, consequences, that sort of thing. So when a student receives an out-of-class referral, myself or our skills room para, Angela Schutte, who's in the audience as well, we will work with the students then on using those classroom expectations to guide our discussions with them. So, you know, this is what your teacher expects, this is what you did, what can you do differently the next time to avoid being sent out of class? So we've noticed that we have had a decrease in the amount of instructional time that students are losing because our conversations are more focused. They're getting the kids, you know, back into class immediately. So Becky LaFrenz and Val spent numerous hours over the summer developing lesson plans, building wide expectations, and that sort of thing. So they are going to go over that with you.
Okay, thanks. Hi, I'm Becky LaFrenz, and I'm going to talk to you about the big picture of implementing a building-wide behavior plan. Val and I got together over the summer, and what we did was we took the best pieces of the numerous behavior plans that are out there, and if you want to look at this piece, the inverted triangle, what we did was we wanted to form common language and create an atmosphere where respect was shown by the teachers for the students and by the students for the teachers. And we did that through implementing a school-wide lesson plans, which Val will speak to. And then we also created classroom expectations for the teachers to implement. And I always think that good instruction is the best classroom management plan you can have. So Cindy's allowed us to beef up our instruction throughout the year, and we are seeing progress.
I'm going to speak a little bit to the lesson plans. Oh, and I'm Val Pennock. I'm the kindergarten teacher that worked with Becky. I'm going to speak a little bit to the lesson plans that we created to help teach these core concepts to all of the students K-5. In your packet, there's a sample lesson plan for transitions. And all of our lesson plans follow this format where there's the teach, there's the model, and the practice. So the students are engaged in what it doesn't look like, for example, walking in the hallway, and what it does look like, and then that practice piece. All classrooms, K-5, practiced each of these lesson plans in these areas for 2 weeks of implementation before we transferred their learning onto a poster. So each classroom has a poster like this hanging outside of their door. And it has our core areas that we're looking for the children to demonstrate and respect. The classroom teachers all have paw prints, and when they see a classroom that's demonstrating those instructional behaviors, those lesson plans in these areas, they award the classroom with that paw print. Now it has to be something that's learned, not demonstrated one time and so-called caught, but something that they see exhibited over time. And then the teachers award those paw prints. To keep it fair, we had the other teachers award the classrooms. I can't award my classroom with a paw print, but I can award the other classrooms. They sign their name so we know who gave that paw print and we can talk to them about that, or they can talk to our students. When the classrooms have earned a paw print in every area, they're eligible for the quarterly reward. Now, if they don't get all of their paw prints, it's not considered failure, but it's considered a teachable moment to talk about what we could do differently next time to try to earn that paw print in that area where we didn't receive it the first time. And this is my poster. So my kindergarten classroom and I had discussion about playground and cafeteria so that next time we can hopefully have paw prints in all of the areas. So we have to earn them each quarter, not just once and done.
I was just here to help you.
Oh, I'm in. We're good. I think we're good.
Okay. I think what we didn't mention to you at the beginning is that we are the Buchanan Bulldogs, and so that's why we call this the BARK Initiative. Buchanan students are respectful and kind, and you will hear who let the dogs out more than once in our building. So, do you have any questions?
Anybody? Director Dickman.
Do you overhear students talking about the posters sometimes? Do they say, "Oh, I really want to get into"? Okay.
Yes. Want me to talk about the fourth grade teacher? Yes. Okay. Our fourth grade teacher, Chelsea Bolt, had a new student that came into the classroom, and she was talking to the student about, this is what we do in our room, these are our procedures. And her students were excited to tell them about the BARK program and how they get paw prints and how we don't just do it one time, but all the teachers have to see us doing it every single time, and how we have to all work together, and you just can't do the right thing, we all have to do the right thing. And she was really thrilled to see the children taking the ownership and the excitement in that, and to teach it to their new students in the classroom. So yeah, we do see kids pretty excited about that.
Very cool.
Director Crumwoody.
First of all, I want to thank you for your presentation, and I want to thank you for this program. Just last board meeting, I believe it was, that we had a conversation with our high school board members about behavior issues at the high school. And I had asked about what we're doing at the elementary schools because several years ago we had a pretty consistent program across the district. So I'm pleased to hear that Buchanan School is doing such a program. I'm curious about the amount of time that you spend when you do your lesson, and is that consistent across the building? So if a kindergarten teacher is doing a certain lesson, is that evident in all kindergartens? If I'd go into all kindergartens, I'd see that lesson, and would it be going on at the same time of day? Or how do you do that? How do you implement the lessons?
Well, at the beginning of the year, as I said, we spend 2 weeks where every classroom teacher is implementing those lessons. And following that, if there are certain classrooms that are doing well with that hallway transition, then that classroom may not revisit that lesson as often as a different classroom would. Teachers also have open communication where they might talk to their colleagues and say, you know, we see the kiddos in the hallway and they're really having trouble with this. And then that gives them an opportunity to revisit that lesson with the kids. It can be anywhere from a simple extra walk in the hallway after specials. We did that on Monday. Or it could be sitting down and doing that direct instructional piece again, modeling what it doesn't look like, and then modeling what it does. So on average time frame,
Going to vary from, like kindergarten, they may only spend about 10 minutes on that lesson, and in the upper grades, they may spend a little bit more in depth just because of the time that the children, their attention span. But the first 2 weeks, every single classroom was doing every single lesson every day for the first 2 to 3 weeks. And then we have our monthly BARC meetings during our some of our PD time, where we regroup, we talk about what's working, what's not working, what can we do different, that sort of thing. So it's a lot of conversation, a lot of collaboration, and we've been pleased with what we're seeing so far.
Okay. My last question is, on your chart, you showed us the cafeteria and playground. And as a former elementary principal, I can assure you that's where most of my issues were, in the cafeteria and on the playground. So I'm curious as to how you involve the paraeducators and other staff in this program to make sure there's some consistency in those areas outside of the classroom.
Well, Valerie and I both have something to share with you about this. We, in our monthly staff meetings, we do ask the paras to stay for that hour. We feel like their investment in this program is as important as a teacher's investment. They supervise the areas that you're speaking of, and they need to feel valued in this work as well. So they're a part of that staff development. Did you have something else?
yeah, we meet as a BARC committee twice a month, and one of our big discussions just recently was that cafeteria and playground piece, because teachers tend to be that type A personality that, you know, we can help to control some of these things when we're in the hallway with our kids. But, you know, playground and cafeteria, we're not always right there. We might be having lunch, or, you know, we have other adults that are helping to supervise. So we've had that professional development with our paras to make sure that they're on board and looking for those same expectations that we are. And we've also empowered our paras to hand out paw prints as well, so that they have that opportunity to have that teachable moment with those kids when they're under, you know, their instruction too.
May I add one more thing? We have invested a significant amount of time in staff development and in teaching lessons to children, but we feel like we're redeeming the time in the instructional time that we're saving in the classroom, because children's behaviors are changed. And the climate and the culture at Buchanan is just different this year. And I know Mr. Schnaden's been out to visit us and has said as much. We feel like the amount of instructional time we save is well worth the investment.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Director Snyder.
Once the kids have earned their paw print, is it possible for them to lose a paw print once they've earned it?
No, but we start the initiative brand new every quarter.
Okay.
So we're just beginning a second quarter, and we're starting from scratch. Every student knows that we are demonstrating these respectful, responsible behaviors again this quarter, and they have a new incentive to work toward. So,
Have you found any kids that sort of stand out as like the classroom leaders that are working towards, you know, achieving those paw prints? Because, you know, you have some what I'll call team leaders you know, that really motivate the group to get that paw print. And
I teach fifth grade, and my kids know the lessons, they know the system, they could probably run the system if I asked them to. And it's amazing how much they, like when we're in the hallway, they'll be, you know, hey, get in line, do this, do that. And then once we're ready to go, they're down the hall, they know all the procedures, and we talk about them in the class all the time, they talk to each other about them all the time. I mean, it's really become a common language for them too, not just the staff.
thank you. I think there's some valuable life lessons in that, well beyond a laminated piece of paper with paw prints on it. So, very good job.
And you had asked, do they get a sticker taken away? They won't get the sticker taken away, but what will happen is that's when that reteaching will come in. So if we notice that, okay, you've got your sticker, but we're starting to see some behaviors that aren't appropriate for, you know, the respect that we're expecting during that transition or, you know, whichever area we're talking about, then the classroom teachers will go back and then use that opportunity to reteach. So, and they do that right then. They don't wait. It's immediate reteaching.
Thank you.
Director Sherwood.
Yeah, and I want to, along with the rest of everybody else, this is very impressive. If it's not the best program in the district, it's very close to being the best from what I can see. You did a lot of work on this. You did, I think your research base looks solid. The things I would consider if I were you, too, is how I reach out to the students before they come into my building, how I spread these expectations to 4-year-olds and 3-year-olds, if you can do that, because I think that gives them a head start to this kind of behavior. Second thing is, and you're absolutely right, this is just as important or more so than reading, writing, and arithmetic in academic success. If you don't get this piece, nothing else follows. So you're spending time on it if it's not enough, spend more, because this is extremely important stuff. And the final thing is, KIPP academies use a behavioral report card, a character development report card that goes right along with their academic report cards. I would encourage you to look at that, because with that report card you can be more specific about the individual's kids than what your program seems to do right now. And I think parents can become part of that that developmental model for you. You can use them to support this, and other caregivers. So you might want to consider that piece. But excellent work. The KIPP academies, Knowledge is Power academies. It's a private charter school thing, but sometimes charters do it right, and I think the KIPP academies do that in character development. So take a look at their report cards. You might be interested in that. Thank you.
Anyone else? Director DeFau.
I'm just curious as to what the quarterly reward is. I don't think that you mentioned that. If they achieve that.
Well, this quarter, our reward was a delicious surprise snack at their lunchtime, and they got a bonus recess. This quarter, we have asked the teachers to go back to the classrooms and ask the children, what would you like to work toward? Because we feel like that could become more meaningful for kids if they actually know what it is that they're working toward. Last year we did have a party with the DJ at the end of the school year, because we did begin this process back in the spring. So we have some really fun ideas, but we think it's time for us to ask the children, what is it that you care about?
Director Kluhl.
Yeah, Director Crumwoody mentioned the Skills for Life program, and this is like Skills for Life on steroids. This is like really powered. Are we no longer doing Skills for Life in general in our elementary schools?
We are.
We're still reporting it on the report card.
You are? Okay.
We have the signs, the life skill signs across down the hallway. So I think it's implicit. It's not explicit, but I think it definitely is a part of what we do.
And it is part of my discussions and Angela's discussions. If they do have an out-of-class referral, we incorporate those life skills that they could be working on and what they could do better into, you know, their classroom expectations, that sort of things.
Well, I think it's a great thing. I know that we're all trying to make more efficient use of our time in schools, and you certainly reflected that. I'm really pleased too with the fact that there is a reflective process involved here, where you reflect back, I think that's so important. It's see, do, touch, but then to reflect. And as we try to reach all the intelligences, I think that there are some kids that will reflect, and it will be much more meaningful. And certainly something we need to teach our kids about is being reflective and lengthening that attention span a little bit longer. I'm glad you're doing the stickers, and I guess I'm glad you're doing the nutritious snack. I'm always concerned about giving kids tokens for things that they should be doing automatically. So I know that I can sense what you're doing is trying to reach that internal reward. Like, I know maybe we still do it, I hope not, but when we read a bunch of books, we get a certificate for some pizza or something. I said, no. We read because we want to read, not because we get this external gift. So I think it's great that you're going to involve the kids in helping to make the decision, and I hope that you will be able to give them guidance in terms of, why we're doing this. It's not for a gift that you're going to get in a quarter. It's because it makes you a better person. So I think that's great. Now, last thing, I'm wondering, it sounds, the way you presented it, almost as if every room is like a library and quiet. Are there times in classrooms where kids collaborate and it gets a little noisy?
Yes, you can come to my room anytime. No, they do. I mean, we do have those collaboration pieces and those partners in small groups, and yeah, absolutely.
And I'd like you to believe that 100% of children respond to a positive behavior initiative, but we do have other responses when children don't follow directions, and there are a small percentage of kids who need more. This is like our Tier 1 behavior intervention, and this extra support that classroom teachers give is a Tier 2 behavior intervention. But we do need to sometimes take a little stronger approach with a very small few kids, and so we have those systems in place as well.
Well, as much as kids sometimes resent boundaries, I think that that's what you're providing for these children, and I think that they appreciate the comfort of knowing where they stand on any given day. So I think that's very, very good and very conducive to getting what you want as a school, which is higher achievement. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, very good. Well, thanks for a great presentation. Very inspirational. Thanks a lot. We'll move on to communications. November 4th at 5:30 p.m., Committee of the Whole, ASC, Jim Hester Boardroom. November 5th, 3 p.m., Legislative Advocacy Meeting, ASC, Executive Boardroom. November 6th, 4 p.m., Policy Committee, ASC, Executive Boardroom. November 11th, we're closed for Veterans Day. November 12th is Tuesday at 7 p.m. would be a regular meeting at the ASC Jim Hester Boardroom. November 14th, between 6 and 7:30 p.m., public discussion on school start date and high school block schedule at North High School Auditorium. November 18th, between 6 and 7:30 p.m., public discussion on school start date and high school block schedule at the West High School Auditorium. November 25th, 7 p.m., a regular meeting, ASC Jim Hester Boardroom. November 28th and 29th, closed for Thanksgiving. Next is open forum for community input. Open forum is a time for members of the community to give input at a board meeting regarding school district issues or concerns. Individuals who want to speak should fill out an open forum request and give it to the board secretary prior to open forum. The board will not act on any issue presented during open forum if it was not published as an agenda item. The Iowa Open Meetings Law prohibits action on any issue that is not on the agenda. The president will set the amount of time allowed for individuals to speak during open forum. The board asks that no charges or complaints be made against individual employees of the district or the community during open forum. Remarks that reflect negatively on the character or motives of any person will be called out of order. Tonight we have 5 open forum requests. You'll each be allowed 2 minutes to speak. I'll read the list here. Sue Miller will be first, then Ashley Mack, Ciara Schwen, and Tara Peters, Catherine Morris, Kathleen Mata. So if you'll come up in that order, come up to the microphone and please give us your name and address. And go ahead.
I'm Sue Miller, and my address is 3497 Spencer Drive, Bettendorf. My concern is to let you know that I would like to have your support in renewing the Jefferson Edison contract. I have been a business partner along with my husband at Jefferson Edison for almost 15 years, since the beginning of Edison. We have monthly meetings with our business partners and with some of the staff at Jefferson, and they keep us abreast of the benchmarks of the students, what's going on at the school. We've had some good reports and good rapport with the Edison people. We've had a change in principals in the 15 years we've been there, and that's made a difference in the climate at the school too. We can definitely see a change in culture with Edison there. The kids are very respectful and polite and very well-mannered. Our son is a teacher at the school, and that's how we got involved in Business Partners. And I have heard nothing from him or his friends, nothing but good about Edison. They love the curriculum, they love the support they get, they love the schedule they have with Edison, the longer days, the longer school year, everything. They love Edison, and that has been reflected in the way they teach their kids, and we see that through the Business Partners.
Thank you. Next is Ashley Mack.
Hello. My name's Ashley Mack. I live at 1627 West Pleasant Street, Davenport, Iowa, 52804. I just came to talk about how my son has been bullied for 3 years and what we need to do to keep him safe. My son Lydell is a 6th grader at Williams Intermediate. He's on the autism spectrum. He's been harassed and abused by the same boys for 3 years. He has been physically assaulted 3 times. On October 11th, he was attacked on his way home, causing bodily injury. A concerned parent walked him back to the school. My son has been absent from school since October 16th because the school has failed to make it safe for him to return. He is petrified to go back. I need help from you to know that we together can keep my son safe from these bullies. He needs to return to school and not miss out on a normal life. Could you consider putting a plan in place to keep him safe? Because as of now, I don't know if I will ever return him to a Davenport school again, based on the way that they handle these situations with these kids who are being bullied. They're not safe. They're meant to face their attackers on a daily basis, and it's just not right. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ashley. Next is Ciara, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name, Schwen, and Tara Peters.
You got it. Hi, my name's Ciara Schwen of 2704 North Fairmont, Davenport. And I'm Tara Peters of 8300 145th Street, Bluegrass, Iowa. Ciara and I have always been raised to stand up for what we think is right and do what, and that's why we're standing here in front of you today. Last April, we had lost a close friend and a fellow student, Skylar Kopp, in a car accident on his way to school. Not too long after that, we designed a t-shirt in loving memory of him, and Skylar loved and admired guns, so of course we decided to do guns as the main design. At West High School, we aren't able to wear these t-shirts, but at other schools such as Wilton or Scott and North, people are allowed to. All these shirts are for is just to remember Skylar. They are not any act of violence. In the dress code, it does not say a single word about wearing shirts with a simple gun design. However, it does state no profane statements or inappropriate clothing, such as too revealing clothing. While we are told we need to change, the kids who are really in violation of the dress code are perfectly fine, and not one single word has been spoken to them. Just to show how much we are injustice, and of an injustice we believe this, we started a petition, and just as today we received 80 signatures from the student body. The teachers that we both spoke with all said that this was a good idea and they fully supported us. We did not ask for any signatures, of course, from teachers, but they said they were proud of us for standing up for what we believe in and following our hearts and coming to you guys tonight about this.
All this t-shirt is to remember a good friend and a student that had went to West. We believe that if it is fine by you, we could wear these t-shirts. It is most certainly not a distraction to this learning, and if anything, it shows support for a fallen student.
We thank you guys for listening to us tonight.
Thank you, Sierra and Tara. Tara, is it Tara or Tara? Tara?
Tara.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Catherine Morris.
My name is Kathy Morris. I live at 1837 West 37th Street. My husband and I have custody of my grandson. He's an 8th grader at Williams Intermediate. He's on the autism spectrum, and he has been a target of multiple bullies since 6th grade. Last year, he was attacked in the gym locker room about 2 or 3 weeks before the end of the school year, and 3 students recorded this on their camera phones. When my grandson told me about what happened, I talked to the principal, and I was assured that this was deleted from their phones. My grandson fears for his safety and now refuses to use the school bathrooms. He won't tell us what happened to him. He won't tell his doctors what happened to him, but I know something has. Could you get up for work every day, use the restroom at home, knowing that you were going to have to wait another 8 hours to use the restroom when you got home? Could you do your job? Could you concentrate on your job? Would you want to do your job? Please help my grandson, Damien. He needs our help. And by the way, he's on medication because since the incident in the gym locker room, he's been suicidal. And he's on antidepressants, which is extremely dangerous for a 14-year-old grandson to be on. I need help.
Thank you, Catherine. Next is Kathleen Mata.
Kathleen Mata, 2507 Warren Street, Davenport. I am speaking in support of the Edison contract renewal. I am in my 18th year as a bilingual kindergarten teacher at Jefferson Edison. 16 years ago, when we were told as a staff that Edison might be coming to our school, I became very excited. Our school was second to last in test scores in the district. The only school below us was Hoover, which is, of course, now closed as an elementary. Edison has brought research-based curriculum for low-income students, including the longer day and a longer school year. It's changed somewhat since the initial contract. You need to know my background is I have previously taught 13 years in Colorado, 5 years in the Cedar Rapids area, and 2 years in Marshalltown before my 18 years at Jefferson. I mention this because this is the best kindergarten curriculum I've ever seen in my life. The Kinder Roots reading program is heavy on phonics and vocabulary. Our students need that. Our everyday math program is rigorous and challenging. Our 8 core values are taught every day in our Gathering Circle curriculum, and they are celebrated monthly as a grade level and as a school. Our reading program also contains the components in the letters training, which I'm currently going through with the district. It's included in our Kinder Corner curriculum already. Has it all been perfect over the 15 years I've been there? No, of course not. Would I make the same decision I did 16 years ago as a teacher to vote for this? Absolutely, yes. My example would be a little girl in my class last year. Her name is Sinetta. She was in a foster home, and she finally was transferred to a foster to adopt home. And her mom took her over to Grandma's to visit, and she said, Sinetta, pull out your book and read to Grandma. Sinetta read her book, and she said, Sinetta, are you in a special program at school? She said, no, Grandma. She says, Sinetta, has Mom been working with you at home on this? Did you buy special curriculum with her? And she said, no, Grandma, this is the book Mrs. Mata gives everybody in our class. And the grandmother said, my kids wouldn't be able to read this. Her grandmother was principal at Rivermont Collegiate. That was a really proud moment as a teacher. And this little girl...
Okay, Kathleen, I've got to interrupt because
I'm sorry.
You've gone past the 2 minutes.
Oh, I apologize.
That's okay. Could you go ahead and wrap it up?
That was my ending statement.
Okay.
was that I am support of the renewal of the curriculum.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I wanted to thank all of you, Sue and Ashley, Ciara, Tara, Kathleen, and Catherine. It's really important when you come up here and speak to the board, and the board appreciates when you take these opportunities, and it helps all of us learn. We'll move on. Is there a motion for the consent agenda?
Mr. President,
Director Crumwitty.
I move the consent agenda as presented by the administration.
Thank you. Is there a second? Is there any discussion? Call for the vote. Director Crumwitty?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Kluhl?
Yes.
Director Dickman?
Yes.
Director Sherwood? Yes. Director DeFau?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Is there a motion regarding approval of bills?
Mr. President,
Director Kluhl.
I move that the board approve the following resolution for the bill listing period October 10th, 2013 through October 23rd of 2013. Resolution is as follows. Resolved that all claims presented to the board, having been duly certified as correct by the Secretary, reviewed by the administration and board members, and they are hereby audited and allowed as just claims and warrants drawn in the Treasury for the several amounts. Further resolved, the payment of claims and salaries be approved as presented with the following voided check, and that being check number 311308, payable to Barnes & Noble in the amount of $5,728.57. That check was in the wrong amount.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? I have a couple of things. On the bill review summary, third from the last, check number 311413, the amount is $5,000. And I just thought that was a strange amount, because it seems almost like a set amount. And I didn't know if it was coincidental, or if it's like a monthly fee that we pay. Would you know, Marcia?
No, I'm sorry, I wasn't given a copy of the review.
What was the check number, Ralph?
It was 311413. It's to the Iowa Division of Criminal something or other. If you don't know right now, we could get a different
No,
time.
I'm sorry, I don't. I'll have to follow up on that one.
Okay. And then I was reviewing the bill listing as well. And that's quite a review, especially if you're trying to look at things. And I wondered if it would be difficult to just give one more listing, but the listing would be in descending order of amount instead of right now it's in alphabetical order, it appears. And I wouldn't want to change that, but if we could have one in descending order, it just gives me an idea of where we're really spending the money.
Sure, we can
Okay.
get that for you.
All right, thank you. Is there any other discussion? All right, we'll call for the vote. Director Kluhl.
Yes.
Director Dickman.
Yes.
Director DeFau.
Yes.
Director Snyder.
Yes.
Director Sherwood.
Yes.
Director Crumwitty.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Move on to superintendent report.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to celebrate a huge success we had this weekend. We began our Greater Achievement Plan program with a celebration of education downtown at the Radisson Hotel, and this was put together in the Department of Federal and State Programs by Kendall Owa, and we also had Jillian Townsend, who was the one that was on the ground getting these things done. Together they're quite a team, and I think Sarah Harris helped. But I asked Jillian to come forward and just give us a little update on who was there and how many and so forth. She could do a better job than I.
Good evening. I'm Jillian Townsend. I'm the Federal Program Specialist for Davenport Schools. I am so excited about the Greater Achievement Plan kickoff. It was this past Saturday at the Radisson Hotel downtown from 11 to 1. There were 73 out of 177 Greater Achievement Plan students there. Busing and childcare were provided, which we all know that when we provide extra support like that, we have a larger turnout. We had cultural liaisons there to translate for our Vietnamese and Spanish families. There were 49 siblings of GAP students who were checked into the child care rooms, which was provided by Harvest Bible Chapel. They had 25 volunteers come out and volunteer their time just to watch our students for free. Every student received a t-shirt, a bag full of educational materials and books. There were prizes donated from local businesses for families, and we raffled those off towards the end. There was a breakout session full of learning for parents and students. We had 2 motivational speakers for our parents. One motivational speaker was my father, Joe Townsell. He was the president of the school board in Galesburg, Illinois. And our other motivational speaker was Rick Price, who just made it into the West Hall of Fame. He flew all the way out here from Colorado Springs just to talk to our parents. Central High School Marching Band also came and did a performance during lunch. Many community partners such as the Boys and Girls Club, Harvest Bible Chapel, the Davenport Library, the LULAC Junior Theater, all addressed parents and had informational booths available for them. There were 10 principals that attended, a few school board members, our superintendent, executive director came. Channel 8 News, Quad City Times were present. I mean, I can sit here and tell you on and on about the details of the event, but you really had to be there to really just feel the energy and excitement that our families felt. They really felt supported, and that's what it's about. When community, family, and schools come together, that really is in the betterment of our students.
Thank you, Jillian. I appreciate that. And the further support or further reports, I'll go to our students. And shall we start, Carolyn, with you?
Okay, so this weekend we had the Iowa All-State auditions. And from Davenport North, we had 12 choir members make it and 1 alternate. And previously, we had 5 students make the Opus, the 5 freshmen make the Opus choir. But since we had 3 freshmen make All-State, we only have 2 representing at Opus. But it is the first time, I believe, since North opened that we've had 3 freshmen make All-State. So it's a very proud moment.
Our football team, our freshman football team, are city champs this year with a 5-4 record. And our Burlington versus North football game, it was senior night, it placed in MAC history and was the highest total points of 113, which is both teams combined. So that's pretty exciting considering we had no wins last year. We're improving. And then on top of the All-State, one of our orchestra members got into All-State, and then one of our band members did too.
Sorry. At Central last weekend, we had the marching band finish out their season with a great show. The judging scoring got messed up a bit, so the placement really didn't count, but we all felt great about our show. And then coming up, Central will also be putting on their musical, I believe, in 2 weeks. I'm not quite sure about the date, but it's coming up and it's supposed to be a really good performance.
Also on Saturday, Central had 9 choir members make All-State. We had, how many Opus? I think 7 Opus members and a couple people from the band. And another thing that I was really excited about that you guys may not be excited about, but we got Naked Juice at lunch now, or we have that at lunch now, and it's just a healthy alternative to, like, I don't know, I'm not a big Gatorade fan, but yeah, it's pretty exciting. So.
And they reminded me, not this weekend, but the previous weekend, we had our school play Moon Over Buffalo, and it was a really good success.
This weekend we had the Iowa Youth Congress meeting up in Des Moines. Our bill didn't go through, but we're going to go for it next year, and we're supporting a couple of other bills.
We actually just had the women's science math thing happen. Was it last weekend? It was in the middle of the week. And they went off, had a good time from what I know of, because I have the t-shirt, I just didn't go. And like 6 of the girls went and had a good time from what I've heard. And then we also had the police department come in and talk to us at lunch about, like criminals and like what he has done for his job and, what to do and all of this and that. And then like people, like the people who wanted to go and like have the career, they went into it. And I'd probably say a good amount of people who actually like go to the Kimberly Center actually went and like listened to this guy, which I was really surprised. So.
Thank you, student board members. Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to other items requiring action. May I have a motion regarding approval of plans and specifications for restroom renovation Phase 3?
Mr. President,
Director DeFau.
I move that the board approve the administration's recommendation for the plans and specifications as presented for the restroom renovation Phase 3 project.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Just a quick question for Scott.
Director Sherwood.
I just want to have you tell me that we're doing everything we can to use waterless systems in these urinals.
We were not in these.
We're not in these.
No. We've picked and choosed some locations that seem to be a better fit than others. These particular ones would not be a good fit for those. I guess that's all I can say.
And as my maintenance background that comes out, flush valves are notorious for water wasters. Have they improved? Are we doing a better job with maintaining them so that
they are improved, and they're automatic flush valves. One thing that you find as you use automatic flush valves is that we're going to electric, and what you find when you lose power is electric doesn't work. So we have issues in those situations. So we are including battery in each one, so that we at least maintain the ability to continue using facilities in the amount of an extended outage.
And those are rechargeables, we don't have to switch them out.
No, you replace the battery, but it's just a matter of taking the screws out, replacing the batteries, and they last, they'll last a school year easily.
Yeah, I appreciate any efforts we can make to be greener. It's something we want to do. Thank you.
Any other discussion? We'll call for the vote. Director DeFau.
We need to have a public hearing.
Oh, excuse me. Thank you very much. We will now hold a public hearing on the restroom renovation Phase 3 project as published in the Quad City Times on Friday, October 18th, 2013. Anyone wishing to speak on this project, please step forward to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Seeing and hearing none, I now declare the public hearing closed. Is there any additional discussion on the matter? Now we will call for the vote. Director DeFau.
Yes.
Director Kluhl.
Yes.
Director Crumwitty.
Yes.
Director Snyder.
Yes.
Director Dickman.
Yes.
Director Sherwood.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion regarding approval of change order for the West Auditorium dimming system?
Mr. President,
Director Sherwood.
I move the board accept the administration recommendation for a change order in the amount of $137,240.63 for an upgrade to West High School's auditorium dimming system.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director Snyder.
I have a question. It said in the description of this that a significant portion of the amount of money here is to basically adhere to the short timeline to get it installed between November 2nd play and the Christmas performance in December.
Correct.
About how much money does that equate to?
Well, I don't have the labor breakdown. I'm a guess that it was probably going to be $20,000 to $30,000 of that, and that's because they're going to run two shifts, first and second shift, and around the clock to get it finished.
Is it operable right now? I mean, as it is?
It is operable, and we're having discussions with the electronics company to monitor that. And if it goes beyond that due to whatever, either inability to get the equipment here or whatever, then that amount would come down. We would get a change deduct in the amount. If my plan is to keep that plan, or to keep the current system operational and functional until the last minute, I would never change out one without having the other one ready to go and flip the switch. So there may be a change deduct in that.
So what, I mean, I understand the urgency to get it done, but what, I guess, motivates that to get it done so soon, to spend that much extra money?
Well, that needs to be done. That system needs to be done. Like I said, if it does take longer than what the timeline is, then we will get that money back. So, but we won't know that until they get the equipment ordered and the lighting order. They have it in, but they're just waiting for the approval to get it in and get it done.
Okay.
Director Sherwood.
Following up on Jamie's question, so you're saying that work could be going on at the same time that the existing system is functional, so that the performances we're talking about would be able to go on,
Correct.
even if the work continued into January?
Correct.
And so we're talking about a pretty good hunk of change here, $25,000 to
Yeah.
meet something that is not absolutely essential.
Yeah, right.
And so my opinion would be is that we would not do that. We would not run two shifts. We would go ahead and do this, save that money. Although, unless there are other things I don't know about, is there something come up in January? Is there?
No, there isn't. It was just we wanted to get it done in time for their winter performances.
Yeah, and I appreciate that.
Which is a month
This
of
is quite a
December.
bit of money. So the difference,
Yeah.
if it's $5,000 or something, that might be different, but this is quite a lot.
Any additional discussion? Director Dickman.
I was just wondering if any of the student board members wanted to weigh in on this, if they have any experience with the theater.
I don't go to West, obviously, but I've used our light and soundboard, and I know that it's really a struggle when things don't go the way you want them to. But I mean, I don't know if it's bad enough, so to say, to spend the extra money to get it done. I mean, I think it all just depends on what it's like. So I don't know.
It's currently functional. It's just the board that we want to replace it with. It's going to need the new dimming system for it all to work together.
Any additional Adam?
Well, I was just going to ask because for our family's Christmas lights, we've gone to the store and bought just a simple dimmer switch, and that was pretty cheap and didn't cost much. This, at the price and what it's describing and what we have, it sounds like this is a very high-end system, and I'm wondering if a high school auditorium necessarily needs this high end of a system. I understand there's some systems out there for, say, a news station or a very professional situation that does need to be this high end. Before high school performance, I wonder if they need much more besides simple up and down dimmer switch.
Well, that's kind of what they have now, and the problem is that what the system that they have now only has 40 dimmers, and they have in excess of 100 lights. So what happens is if they've wired them in multiples so that one switch controls many lights, it doesn't give you the ability to focus each light on in a particular area in a particular color. So in that essence, it is pretty important. Unfortunately, auditoriums are one of the most expensive areas to renovate because it has to have a very high level of quality.
So if I understand, the cost isn't so much in the switches, but in the rewiring of the switches.
It's all of that. I mean, every switch is expensive. We're going from 40 switches to 192 switches, and of those are 96 doubles. So you have the ability to double up, so to speak, on some. If you want the exact same light coming out of each one or the same color, you can put them on the same switch.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious.
Hannah, you had something else? Okay, thank you. Any additional discussion? I've got a couple of things. You know, the way that it's worded, it says that this is a change order. So I'm interpreting the whole 137,000 as a change order or an addition to.
It's an addition to.
So.
To what you already approved on.
Right,
on
right.
12.
So it's an additional, and that's quite a chunk. And then the additional 20 or 30,000 to reflect the short timeline, which I'm interpreting. You're saying that isn't necessary.
I'd like to have it done. If they can't get it done in that timeline, we will stretch it and keep the original one in place and get that savings back, the 20 or 30,000, whatever that is. It would be a change deduct coming back to us.
I understand, but right now you're asking us to authorize that 20 or 30,000 in that. That's reflected in the 137,000, right?
It is, yes. That is the full price to have it done in a timely fashion.
And there's probably a sense of urgency to getting an approval for at least some of this tonight. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And I couldn't break that out for you by dollar amount on with the dimmers are this and the board is this, and I couldn't break that out for you. It was a guess on my part on the labor of that, because that is the bid from the vendor.
I understand, but the vendor, if depending on how the motion would be approved, it could be approved in a manner that would authorize you to spend up to the 137,000,
Correct.
but to not authorize additional expenditures simply for the fact of getting it done before the Christmas
Correct.
Performance.
That would be acceptable.
Right. Okay. So I'll leave it up to the board if the board wants to amend the motion or vote it down, however you want to pursue this. Director Sherwood.
Mr. President, I would move to amend the motion to reflect your language, which, as I understood it, was that we're authorizing the total amount with the proviso that no extraordinary circumstances be imposed to meet a particular time deadline, that if it's necessary to go past the Christmas production, then that's what's required in order to make those cost savings.
Okay.
Is there a second to the amendment?
Second.
Is there any discussion on the amendment? Call for the vote for the. This is just for the amendment, as Director Sherwood just expressed. Director Sherwood?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Crumwitty?
Yes.
Director DeFau?
Yes.
Director Kluhl?
Yes.
Director Dickman?
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. So, is there any additional discussion on the original motion? The original motion that's been amended. Seeing none, we're going to vote on this. So this is the motion, which would be as originally written, but including the amendment as we simply, or just approved. That's clear? Okay. We'll call for the vote. Director Sherwood?
Yes.
Director Kluhl?
Yes.
Director Crumwitty?
Yes.
Director DeFau?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Dickman?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding appeal for allowable special ed administrative costs?
Mr. President,
Director Dickman.
I move that the board accept the administration's recommendation that the district apply to the School Budget Review Committee to appeal their decision from 3/25/2013 for administrative costs associated with providing special education services in a private facility, and request their approval of $25,273.20, which was previously denied.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Well, I've got some questions on this one
I have
also.
one, Mr.
Oh, I'm sorry. Director Sherwood.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with doing this. I have a question about how we came to this point, though, that it seems like there was a fairly significant error that occurred, and I would like some assurances that we've moved to make sure that will not happen or cannot happen again.
Are you looking at the next motion? This is the one about that they misunderstood the FTE that we were
Oh, I
claiming?
apologize. Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yeah,
We'll
thank
be
you.
ready for that question.
Thank you
on the
very
next one.
much.
Any additional discussion? I did have a question on the FTEs. And it says in the chart on the first page there, it says the district submitted the following information for staff costs. And it indicates a fraction of an FTE and then an amount. And when I applied if I assumed that, for instance, 0.1 FTE means that 1 FTE would be 10 times that. That's the way my mind thinks. The numbers just didn't seem to add up. And am I reading it right, or am I misinterpreting? You see what I'm saying, Marcia?
The FTE is the amount of time that we associate with what that person is contributing to the Whitmire school, and the dollar amount is the amount that we associate with the amount of time that they're taking, or the cost associated with that time that they're dedicating to the oversight of Whitmire.
So if we just take, the first one, I've got to assume that the 0.1 is not equivalent to the $5,400.
That's correct. We're saying that she would have 0.1 FTE of her time, but there may be some of her time that the costs are not allowable to be applied for, and these are the only expenses that we have identified that would be allowed.
Okay, thank you very much. Any additional discussion? We'll call for the vote. Director Dickman.
Yes.
Director Crumwitty.
Yes.
Director Sherwood.
Yes.
Director DeFow.
Yes.
Director Kluhl.
Yes.
Director Snyder.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. I have a motion regarding request for modified allowable growth for special ed deficit.
Mr. President,
Director Sherwood.
I recommend the board accept administration's recommendation that the district apply to the Special Ed Review Committee for modified allowable growth and a supplemental aid payment for its negative special education balance for the 2012-13 school year.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call, Director Sherwood.
Yeah, don't mind me. My previous question, what have we done to make sure this isn't going to happen again?
We've reviewed our year-end procedures with all the staff that are involved to make sure that they're reading the reports correctly, to understand which year to post the transactions in, and it was an oversight and something that has been reviewed with them and will not happen again.
Do we have a check on this and decide to initial training,
We do. We have two different departments now that are in a position of where they can double check when year end comes to make sure that it's posted to the correct year.
Additional discussion? I did have a question on that. If it isn't allowed for 2013, can it be applied to 2014?
Well, that's my question. I have emailed the Department of Ed and asked them that if they do not allow it, how we can claim it on 2014, because I don't believe there's an avenue for us to do that, which means that we would be denied that much money that we could recoup in spending authority. So I'm currently in a process of communication with them to try and see what the solution is going to be.
All right. Is there anything else we can do?
Honestly, if we are denied this, I will ask that we appeal it similar to what we're appealing the other decision. Because
Okay.
I don't believe, because of an error, that the district should have to suffer to not be able to get that spending authority because the DE decides that a cutoff date is a cutoff date. That's just not acceptable to me.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any other discussion? We'll call for the vote. Let's see here. Director Sherwood?
Yes.
Director Kluhl?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Dickman?
Yes.
Director Crumwitty?
Yes.
Director Defoe?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion regarding Iowa Association of School Boards membership?
Mr. President,
Director Crumwitty.
I move the recommendation that the board join the Iowa Association of School Boards for the annual membership fee of $10,688.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director Crumwitty.
Mr. President, I notice that Galen is here with us tonight to possibly answer some questions, and I have a few, so I would like to have Galen step forward. Is that appropriate?
I guess if you can step up to the microphone merely for the purpose of answering questions. And why don't you tell everybody who Galen is?
Let's let Galen introduce himself.
I'm Galen Hauser, Deputy Executive Director and CFO for the Iowa Association of School Boards.
Thank you. Thank you, Galen. Our board has not belonged to the Iowa Association of School Boards for, I believe, 3 years? And now we're to the point of having more discussion about it. So as a board, we were unhappy about a lot of things at the Iowa School Board Association, and now I would like to have you share with us, why should we, as a Davenport School Board, rejoin?
Well, because it's the biggest reason is that the success of the Iowa Association of School Boards is when we have all school boards in the association to have their voice, so that then we're stronger, particularly when we go to the Capitol. It's much more impressive to say we have 100% of our school districts, AEAs and community colleges, than it is for somebody to say, well, I hear you don't have someone. It was embarrassing when we came to the Quad City Times editorial board last January to be in your district and not to have you as a member when we were speaking to that editorial board. I think one of the things that's happened, a number of things have happened. One of the big things that's happened is that the governor last year in one of his press releases says, as he was mentioning the Iowa Association of School Boards, he's called us a respected organization. We take time as we advocate at the Capitol, particularly because that's where we're really, and I put our strategic plan, one of the goals of our 3 goals of the association is to be more effective with our advocacy for public education at the Capitol and at the federal level. And so we have gotten to the point now where we have the members of leadership of each of the parties and of each of the houses come out and ask our lobbyists what they think, what they should be doing. We have the governor calling us, asking us to meet with his staff to know our position, what we're going to support. Last year, the inclusion of the assessment language and the attention of the legislature to the idea that if we're going to have a common core, we need to have an assessment aligned with that. That came about strictly solely because the association put that out before the session and told people ed reform has to include that assessment language to align with the Common Core. One of the other things that happens, and one of our other goals is basically promoting board governance. And as you know, every time somebody steals money. Some board has difficulty with their superintendent. Some board member goes kind of goes rogue and doesn't fit together and work as a team in their district. That has a negative effect not only on that district, but on the entire state. And so we're committed to trying to provide that level of governance to help boards. And we've also gotten to the point where we're working with our technology to update our technology so that we can be more progressive and current with offering people the option of taking board training 24/7. That's our ultimate goal. We're not there yet, but that's where we'd like to get. We've also, we're probably going to put out the press release, so this is a premature announcement. But from a financial standpoint, the association's audit was just finalized, is going to be released tomorrow. And so for the first time, we have the audit at this point in time in the year, which is the earliest it's been for a number of years, even back when you were still a member. And it's going to have no findings, no deficiencies of operation, and no deficiency of internal controls, which is a significant change from when I came to the organization and we had so many findings. We had an appendix because it had to be written as a separate book. We have one single one. We've been here before, Tom and I, a couple of years ago. We know there's issues that the Davenport board has. We know there's issues of the larger districts. Richard and I were talking earlier that we get accused of representing small districts, and we get accused of representing the large districts. Hopefully, we're representing all the districts and recognize those unique qualities that and differences that the large districts may have from the smaller ones and the smaller ones from the larger. But in the end, the success of advocacy at the Capitol and in the state of Iowa to get every student to where we want them to be takes the entire team, takes everybody that's available to be on that team. And that's why we need Davenport.
Any additional discussion? Director Sherwood.
Yeah, and that's one of my concerns. We have the larger urban districts represent the vast majority of students in this state, but the rap is that we don't have that same weight when it comes to your organization. And so what are you doing to rectify that?
Well, in the fall, shortly after Tom and I were here 2 years ago, we put forward a bill, a change in the bylaws that would have added a UEN seat to the delegate to the ISB board. Unfortunately, had there been one more UEN member, there would have been enough votes to pass that. So that failed. But in spite of that, we now have 3 members of UEN districts. Bill Grove from Council Bluffs, Keith Westerkamp from Cedar Rapids, and Patty Fields, who's our president from Iowa City. So in fact, we do have significant representation from
and how many
districts.
sit on your board?
What's that?
How many sit on your board?
17.
So 3 out of 17.
Mm-hmm.
Still seems a little disproportionate to me. And is that same proposal coming up at this convention?
No.
It is not. Thank you.
Director DeFau.
You mentioned the per pupil funding equity issue. What is the IASB's position on the per pupil funding inequity in the state?
Well, we're trying to work towards, the last 2 years I've been part of a study of the foundation formula, and so that's going to be one of the things that's in that foundation formula that eventually we'll put together a group to put together a stakeholder group. What I say that is right now we have the advocacy groups working with members of state government, and they can't be part of any advocacy. So I would anticipate that the advocacy groups, ISEA, UEN, the AEAs, will put together a strategy on how we can try and accomplish over time the items that are outlined in the report, and one of those is to work towards equity of the regular ed district cost per pupil.
But so it sounds like there's no immediate plans for the upcoming legislative session to address this. This sounds like a
not this legislative session, because what they're scheduled, the legislative committee is scheduled to do their 5-year review next summer, and so we're trying to gear up to try and put the pressure and try and push that group into taking more leadership and trying to promote the issues that we've identified.
So 5 to 6 years out, it sounds like.
It'll probably be like the sales tax. It'll probably be a multi-year approach of trying to bring about improvement in the equity portion of the finance formula.
And can you tell me what the IASB's position is on the governor's recommendation to disallow an early start date for local school districts so that we don't interfere with tourism or the Iowa State
We've
Fair?
been spending quite a bit of time, and we basically put together a lobby group that defeated the change at the in the rules of the DE State Board, and so right now the tourism industry is regrouping, and we've had conversations to try and see to what degree we might be able to keep them from basically lobbying in such a way that it totally takes away our control. But right now we've staved off the first wave of their opposition, but we're fully committed to trying to do all we can to keep the start date within the local decision of every board.
I'm glad to hear that.
Any additional, Director Kluhl?
Well, first of all, I wanted to congratulate you on these really cool pens that are very subtle. They're ergonomic, and also, for the first time I've ever seen a pen has a little keyboard thing you can use on the end here.
That's their specially made. And I think I kept the record here, so I want to.
Oh,
I think
yeah, you got to have one of these.
So yes, they are designed to be used on your electronic devices.
Yeah, that's cool.
We upgraded from the pencils.
We're kind of out of cycle here in terms of joining IASB, our proposal here in front of us tonight. And the reason that started is because our Legislative Advocacy Committee was working on what our priority this year, and we relayed that on to the Urban Education Network, who asked for it initially. But we also provided a copy to IASB because we've always considered, although we weren't members, for you to be part of our bigger family. I'm wondering, UEN at this point hasn't given much recognition to our priority, which is early childhood literacy, pre-K through 2. We're going to continue to work with them when we're in Des Moines. I'm on the steering committee and certainly going to push that issue. Where is IASB in terms of early childhood literacy as an issue?
I don't know if it's risen to an issue that you are bringing it here in Davenport to say it's in our beliefs or in our resolutions at that level. It would be incorporated in our overall philosophy of trying to promote the early grades and what we did on the early intervention
And we talked earlier, the Legislative Resolutions Committee has already met and done their work, and stuff is off to publication. And that Legislative Resolutions Committee is a group on IASB that prepares the priorities for the upcoming legislative session. But we've missed that opportunity at this point in the cycle. What would be our chances? Because our primary intent in bringing this forward was that we would be at the table legislatively, as you've talked about with IASB. What would you say are our chances to bring that up at the Legislative Assembly to get a hearing in front of the entire ASB membership and to be able to move forward with a priority on behalf of ISB regarding early childhood literacy?
Well, at this point, procedurally, you have the opportunity to present that on the floor of the Delegate Assembly as a new resolution. If it doesn't fit to make an amendment to some existing resolution. I didn't take a quick look at the resolutions anticipating that particular question. So that would be the first thing, to see if there's an existing resolution that's already going to be proposed that you can add or tweak it, get your concept embedded in something that's already there. The other option would be to propose it on the floor the day of the Delegate Assembly as a new resolution, in which case I think you've got, you've got your resolution. I think you have some of your rationale, so I think it'd be a matter of trying to get that out there and then trying to identify, see if you can get some other people from the floor, from maybe spread out all over the state to try and speak to say, yeah, we think this is a good idea and that we should add that.
Would we be able to use the IASB listserv to get that information out, since admittedly we're starting from behind the eight ball here in terms of getting that out
I would have
to
to
people?
go back to see what we've done, procedurally, because Mary Gannon's the one that oversees that responsibility, so I wouldn't want to stand here today and promise that without knowing what our procedures are and what we've done in the past to handle those kinds of requests.
I understand. Okay, thank you.
Director Dickman.
You mentioned the assessment, lining that up with the Common Core. I'm curious what the ISB, excuse me.
It's hard to get those 4 letters out.
I'm curious what your position is on high stakes testing and tying teacher pay and teacher employment to test scores, student test scores.
Well, our membership has expressed an interest in considering those things, but we don't have part of what we want to do is aligning the assessment is to get that first line of assessments aligned with the core and be able to say, yes, we're measuring what we're attempting to achieve. I don't think we've got any position on the books that says that we want teachers' evaluation to be based like on 80%, but we think that the assessment process, has some data that should be some amount of it, but we don't have a set amount, but we think that there's some value of the assessment, the results from assessment being used to help evaluate performance of teachers.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Director Sherwood.
It's not a question. I just want to state my position. Is this an appropriate time?
Well, the discussion isn't done yet, but you can state your position.
Yeah, well, my position is I think this is a flawed organization, but that we're stronger as members of the organization attempting to change it from within, that we have to make as big an impact in Des Moines as possible. I think Rich's plan for introducing something on the floor is a good plan. If not next year, we need to work this into the fabric of the organization, along with other concerns. But I am in favor of rejoining.
Any additional discussion? Director Dickman.
This is actually, I think, more a question for Marcia. But the amount that we would be paying to join, just wanted to clarify that that was not part of the general fund. That is something that where the funding source comes from for that.
That is part of the general fund, and it would be part of the board's budget.
Okay.
I have a couple of questions. First, who is your lobbyist?
Emily Piper. We contract with Emily Piper.
A lot of people here don't even know the history going back 4 or 5 years ago, whenever it was, that some of the, what I consider to be horrible things occurred at the IASB. And I know that we're moving forward, and in fact, I had a lengthy conversation last November with Patty Fields. And Patty and some others on the board assured me that the board had changed and that it was accepting responsibility for the leadership of the IASB, and that some of the things that had happened in the past wouldn't happen in the future. A couple of things, though. This issue of equity, I think even you spoke eloquently about the fairness of that particular issue at some point, and I don't recall if it was here or at another. It was here, and it's, I don't even remember now, but it's a few $1 million for us, and so it's very difficult for me to to abide that. I understand the political difficulty in trying to muster support for something like that. But that's where I look for the leadership from the IASB. And the IASB board, I would think, would be the ones that that could move something like that if they believed in it. I think you have probably half of the school districts don't want it to happen, and half probably do want it to happen, which would make it difficult. But I think from a leadership perspective, it would be especially appropriate if the IASB would do something like that. Before I call for the vote, student board members, I don't know what your thoughts are on this particular discussion. You may not have any particular thoughts on our participation in this organization. It's an organization that you would probably not have even known about. But before I close the discussion, do you have any questions? Adam?
Yeah, I'll say something. Well, I'll ask if we were to assume that Davenport Community Schools joins the IASB, what percentage of school boards would be a member total in Iowa?
Well, currently there's 356 entities that can join, and currently there's 9 that do not join, so we're about at the 97%
Okay, thank you.
level. Probably Davenport would increase his 2,500s.
I guess any other student board members? Carolyn?
If we were to join, exactly how would that affect us? Is it just a title of membership, or I'm not really understanding what it does, like how it benefits us to join, or how it is detrimental if we don't?
Director Kluhl, I'd like to ask you to answer that question.
Well, it's a good question. In fact, I was going to ask Mr. Hauser that myself at some point. It's a matter of as Mr. Hauser talked about, trying to create the largest choir that you can around issues that you think are most important. And the Iowa Association of School Boards is obviously dedicated to the welfare of children and students in particular. This board is in that same business. We have a voice here at this board table, but it's limited. We can, and the Legislative Advocacy Committee is preparing to prepare a resolution for the City of Davenport, for the board to send to the City of Davenport regarding our legislative priority being early childhood preschool literacy. So we will send that off to the governor if that all happens. But it's one small school district in a state here of 351 school districts. And if we can work together with the Urban Education Network, which is a group of about the 18 larger school districts in the state of Iowa, we are a member with that organization. If we work with them on our rather small legislative priority, then if we also work with the Iowa Association of School Boards, which is a much larger entity, the opportunities for us to do the things that we think are important here in Davenport, the opportunity is much larger that it will actually happen, because we become part of a choir that's saying, yes, these issues are important for our students.
Any other discussion? Oh, excuse me, Adam.
I have another question. It says here annual membership fee of little over $10,500. By my understanding, lobbying Congress is any Congress is never a cheap endeavor. And if the price were to increase for some reason, would the school board ever be called upon for additional fees during the year in order to cover those? Like, would you ever charge all the members of the group additional fees in order to cover unseen expenses?
We don't make any mid-year assessments, but the dues are set annually. So the dues are scheduled to go up for 14-15.
But we won't ever get something in the middle of the year, a random ask for a couple grand?
Not while I'm part of the administration, but I can't speak to when somebody else is.
Okay, thank you.
Director DeFau?
It is true, is it not, that the Davenport Community School District would pay a larger membership fee than other school districts within the state?
The way the membership works is it's calculated off of the revenue, your general fund revenue, and the top 25 districts, theirs is capped at this 10,000 plus number. Otherwise, if we kept that same formula, you would be paying like $50,000 to belong to the association. So it's the highest amount. The top 25 pay the highest amount, but it's capped. And you should know that the dues of the association are the second next to the lowest of all the contiguous states to Iowa. So a school this size would be paying significantly more if they were located on the other side of the river, or if they were in Wisconsin, or if they were in Minnesota, or if they were in Missouri. You'd be paying considerably more to belong to the state association than you do here in Iowa.
Director Cromedy?
Just some clarification about the dues. As I understand, our dues, most school districts, they start the year in July. We would begin the year in September, is that correct?
Well, the membership year goes from July through June. And so typically what we do is we give districts until October 1st to pay the current year's dues, because some people pay them in the spring because they want them out of the previous year, and some want to wait till they approve them in September and get their first state aid payment there. But your dues for 13-14, your dues are from July to June. We have so if you join tonight for 13-14 and you want to wait till the very last minute, you would have until September 30th of next year to pay for 14-15, so that you don't have any break in your membership. What we have said to the district is, if the district rejoins tonight and selects a delegate, even though we also are willing to extend the deadline to process the delegate assembly packet for your district and to get the credentials ready, so that we have those ready here in November for delegate assembly. So if you were to join tonight, pay the full year's dues, we are going to allow you to have a delegate and have your 15, I think you have 15 votes at this delegate assembly in November.
Thank you.
Director Sherwood? Okay. Any additional discussion? Director Kluhl, did you have something else?
Well, yeah, just
Okay.
real shortly, and you do too. Yes. You don't have the floor. I guess it doesn't matter. Director Sherwood played his cards and said how he's going to vote, and I would like to do that too. I think I was, as Galen mentioned, I was with the Iowa Association of School Boards for a year during some of the deepest, darkest, dankest, dirtiest days that could possibly have happened. I remember being there and the press being outside the building as soon as we got out, wanting all kinds of information about what was going on, and so much of it at that point was personnel related, and we couldn't talk about it. It was a very painful time, and what it was is we had hired a CEO who did some things that were against the law, and we ended up in front of the Senate Ethics Committee and just a whole lot of stuff. It was a very painful time, and the things that I had joined that board for we were not doing. I joined the board so that we could do great things for schools and kids, but we ended up in litigation, and it was a very painful time. But I believe that the board at this point has come around to the point where they are starting to work on education issues again, spending time on the things that we all think are important, and my vote will be yes.
Director Crumwoody.
I guess I do have something to say. When I joined this board, we were members of the Iowa School Board Association, and some of my colleagues on the board encouraged me to get involved with some of the workshops And I think those workshops certainly helped me to grow a lot as a board member and to better understand our function as board members. I attended several of those workshops during the year and also at the conferences. We also had the opportunity, 3 of us from this board plus our board secretary have given presentations at the convention in the past. And from that experience, we also gained respect from many of the school districts around the state. Our presentations were concerning legislative advocacy, and that's what this association is really all about, is helping other boards of education also, and learning from other boards of education. And we're very proud to say that there are other boards now that have legislative advocacy groups around this state because of this Board of Education helping them to learn more about the process, how to build a legislative advocacy committee on your board, and how to reach out into the community and do the work. So I, too, have been very supportive. I was very disappointed in what happened in the past with the association, but I think things are changing. I hope things have changed a lot, and my vote will certainly be yes to rejoin this organization.
Any additional discussion? We'll call for the vote. Director Crumwitty.
Yes.
Director Kluhl.
Yes.
Director Snyder.
No.
Director Dickman.
Yes.
Director Sherwood.
Yes.
Director DeFau.
No.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hauser. The next action item is to approve the selection of delegate and an alternate to the IASB. So at this point, I would ask if anybody would like to be a delegate or an alternate.
Mr. President,
Director Kluhl.
I think this would be a great opportunity for our 2 new board members as delegate and alternate. Just a suggestion.
I appreciate that. I'm not sure what their activities are. I know you both are attending learning activities, and the delegate assembly takes up the better part of an afternoon. Excuse me? It's in the morning. Oh, it's in the morning. And I don't know, Mary, can you help me? Do Director Dickman or Snyder have any conflicts with the convention?
Wednesday morning is the boot camp.
Is Wednesday morning the delegate assembly? Huh?
That starts at 9.
And when is the delegate assembly?
The delegate assembly is scheduled from 9 to noon.
On Wednesday.
On Wednesday.
Okay, so so I appreciate your thoughtfulness, Director Kluhl. I think that they would have conflicts. Are there any others that would offer to participate as delegate or alternate? Director Crumwitty.
Director Kluhl, if he would do so for us, has been our rep before, and I think he's done an outstanding job. I would like to suggest, if he would be willing to be our representative as a delegate.
Thank you, Director Crumwitty. Mary, can you help me with my agenda?
Well, you're not going to the boot camp, but you're going to that Steve Lamb workshop, right?
I've got the UEN steering committee. That's on Tuesday, but there's the early bird. Is that on?
The Steve Lamb workshop that you wanted to No, that was you, Steve Lamb, right? He's in the afternoon. You were gonna go to the board governance in the morning.
Yeah,
That's right.
Wednesday morning.
That's a beginner class.
So you've got a conflict as well. Director Sherwood.
Mr. President, I think Director Kermwitty is the natural selection for this. He's also been involved in the past, and he's a man who's flexible enough not to go to something in order to do this.
Director Crumwitty.
He doesn't have a conflict.
Well, thank you, Director Sherwood. I don't have a conflict. I will be there, and I would be most happy to represent this board.
Okay, great. Thank you. Does anybody want to participate as alternate? Director,
I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
I was going to ask if the conflict would prohibit me from participating as an alternate.
Most likely, because the delegate assembly is really, really important, and the classes that you're participating in are really important as well. But you'll be able to sit in on the delegate assembly when you aren't in class. Director Sherwood?
Yeah, I would sign up as the alternate with the understanding that Ken stays healthy between now and then.
All right. Anybody else want to offer to be an alternate? If not, then what I will ask is for a motion approving Director Crumwitty as delegate and Director Sherwood as the alternate to the IASB Delegate Assembly.
I would make that motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Call for the vote. Director Kluhl?
Yes.
Director Dickman?
Yes.
Director DeFau?
I abstain.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Sherwood?
Yes.
Director Crumwitty?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. We'll move on to policy review. Director DeFau.
Mr. President, I move on behalf of the Policy Committee the following policies for board approval. 402.04, Education Requirements. 501.16, Open Enrollment Between Districts. 401.41, Communicable Diseases, Employees. 401.23, Private Use of Public Property. And we also recommend 60204, Special Federal, State, or Privately Financed Programs for deletion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? I've got a question, I guess, on the open enrollment between districts. The comment is that achievement is not considered a socioeconomic characteristic, and therefore it's being removed. And as I read through all of this, it just made me, I questioned again the purpose of the policy. It's one of only a few in the in the state. Is that correct? Okay. I probably don't want to say anything more than that, just that it gave me pause as I read through the policy again. Any other discussion?
Mr. President.
Director Sherwood.
Yeah, I have similar concerns. A couple of reasons. One is our internal policy, which creates the A and B categories for our schools, does include achievement as one of the criterion. And this would be inconsistent, especially since our ratios for the number of students going out of the district are based on those A and B categories. This would be inconsistent as far as having this deleted without deleting those as well, or changing that structure as well. It seems to me. And the second thing is, although there's no one-to-one correlation between achievement and socioeconomic status, there certainly is a correlation between achievement and socioeconomic status. And so to deny that would be to be I think, I don't want to use the word complicit, but in concentrations of, assisting in the concentration of poverty in our district. That's what I believe. I think that achievement is something that we should think about as far as a requirement for out of district transfers.
Given that each of my esteemed colleagues are members of the policy committee that are bringing forward this policy for approval, I might suggest that we could have this conversation at a policy committee meeting.
I'm still in favor of the policy. It's just as I read and reread and thought about that, and we're going to have a discussion later on the diversity plan criteria. Is there a sense of urgency to passing this policy?
Dr. Tate, do you have any sense of urgency in approving this policy?
None I can think of.
Okay.
I guess with that being the case, if that'd be okay with you, I wouldn't mind bringing it back. It'll give us a chance to discuss the diversity plan before we discuss the policy.
I'm not averse to an amendment to the motion, so I would amend my motion to remove policy 501.16, open enrollment between districts.
Is there a second to the amendment? Second. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Call for the vote. Director DeFau?
Yes.
Director Sherwood?
Yes.
Director Crumedy?
Yes.
Director Kluhl?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Dickman?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. So now the the motion as amended is policy 40204, 401.41, 401.23, and 602.04. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, call for the vote. Director DeFau?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Crumedy?
Yes.
Director Kluhl?
Yes.
Director Dickman?
Yes.
Director Sherwood?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. Move on to textbook adoption AP Spanish.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our practice is to bring a textbook adoption to the board and discuss it with you and then bring it back for approval at a later date. Although this is a very small adoption of $3,000, I didn't want to violate that process, so we have people here tonight. And Julie, are you up first? Julie Szesny?
Yep. Thank you. I have Guy Heller here. He is our social studies and many other responsibilities. And so he's here to talk about why we're a little bit out of the normal schedule for this particular adoption.
Good evening. I'll make it quick because I know it's been kind of a long evening. I took over world language responsibilities on July 1st. And one of the first things I did is I sat down with the teachers who I support and started talking about what they needed. And it came to my attention that they hadn't had an AP textbook adoption since 1999. Since that time, there have been a couple rewrites in the curriculum. The College Board has changed it. Most recently, they've changed their focus to a more thematically based AP Spanish course. And the textbook that was selected by the teachers who teach the course, a student and a parent, was this the Temas book that we've asked and requested that it be approved. It's a small adoption, 40 textbooks, under $3,000. And I think, unless you have any questions for me, that's about all I have in terms of why we did it, or why we're asking for it at this time.
Is there any discussion? Director Sherwood.
Just a quick question. Julie, will there be any PD necessary with the AP teachers on this?
Yes. We've been doing quite a bit of PD with the teachers. all along as far as AP because we're trying to boost those scores, and we will definitely have professional development for the teachers if this adoption goes through.
Anything else? I had one question, and it really probably gets to a bigger conversation. But I was thinking about how people learn foreign language, and I took French and Latin when I was in high school, and back then, of course, that's all we had was books, and I think about some of the technological things that are out there. I think about the questions that come up when we talk about textbook adoptions and how fast things change. I'm somewhat alarmed at that we haven't done anything since '99. And when I think about technical approaches to curriculum materials, I'm guessing that they can modify those much more quickly, and it might even be available. And so as I was thinking about this one, I thought, would it be easier to do something on a small adoption like this? I can imagine the difficulty in trying to figure out how to do some of this, and Director Kluhl, I think, continually pushes us in that direction when we get into those questions. But that was a long way to ask what your thoughts are on tech for this particular adoption.
Okay. I'm going to let the teachers and Guy explain to you what technology comes along with this. As far as electronic textbooks, we are biting at the bit to be able to get to that point. It's the one-on-one computers and everything that goes along with that. But I think that the many districts are starting to do that now, and we would love to be able to move in that direction. Okay. Want to talk about the technology?
One of the things that's great about this book is that there is an awful lot of technology that comes with it. It does have a super site that all the students have access to. On that super site, they have AP test preparation materials. There is a student version of the textbook. It has the ability for students to tape themselves on audio and then to chat with other students and have conversations with them, other AP Spanish students and so on. I asked a couple of the teachers who settled on this book to come and talk if there's anything that you want to ask them about the technical aspects, because they actually know more about it on that side of it because they've taught the class before than I do. So, Andrea?
One of the neat things about this also with the super site that comes along with it, that the students have access to all the audio and video, which is a huge component of the AP Spanish language and culture exam curriculum, so the kids would be able to access authentic audio broadcasts and things like that. So.
Okay, Director Sherwood.
Just one final comment. I'm going to give you guys a pat on the back. I didn't see Miss Andrea there. My youngest son is an AP. He's a Spanish and Latin teacher at a prep school in Chicago who deals with nothing but elite students. My youngest daughter travels on business of Spanish language countries with regularity and is very comfortable. Both of them got their foundation in Davenport schools. You guys do a great job, have done a great job historically. If this improves it, then terrific, but you're already doing a great job, so thank you.
Any other discussion? Oh, Hannah?
I think that I'm not enrolled in AP Spanish, but I am in AP Statistics, which was newly offered at North this year. And I think it would be incredibly hard to learn AP Statistics with a textbook from 1999, let alone a whole new language with a textbook from 1999.
'Kay. Director Sherwood?
Just one final comment. I want to give you guys a pat on the back. I didn't see Miss Andrea there. My youngest son is an AP.
Thank you. Elise?
I'm actually enrolled in AP Spanish at Central. Ms. Schrimmel is my teacher. And I think that as this new generation evolves, it's very important to have the technical side aspect as long as the book, because I know I learn more from that, not just reading on a page, but watching a video. And if this passes, I'm really excited to have those additional aspects to help me with my AP test.
Great. Thank you. Carolyn?
Like Elise said, having those technical additions into the textbook is a really great idea. Spanish and any world language is one of those classes that you're not going to learn just from reading. It's an active learning experience. You need to talk. You need to have those videos. Maybe learn the accent. Just kind of experience that. It's not just the book, and having those additions is a really good idea, I think.
Okay, thank you all. Any additional? Oh, Director Kluhl.
It's just an interesting perspective to note, and former Director Robertson is sitting back there in the audience this evening, but he has heard student school board members talk about the fact that no, we don't want the technology because we want the hard cover. And now what I hear is we're kind of taking little baby steps towards maybe at one point being 100% electronic, but in the meantime, both seem to work well.
What I was thinking listening to this is that if in 14 years the policy has changed twice, that made me think probably the next time the AP policy changes, then I'm hoping the school district will be in a better position to transfer over to technical. Because like right now at Central, no one has a Chromebook, and North or West, which one is implementing it right now? It's West? West, yeah, West is implementing it. So hopefully by the next time the AP curriculum changes, more schools will have that capability to go full technical.
Carolyn?
In the classroom, depending on the technology available, that if you want to have that technology, I think it depends on the course. I know for math, technology is really not going to help me. I need a calculator and a textbook. Having videos about math isn't going to help me. But for those more active participation classes, like your world languages, sometimes your history classes, speeches, having that extra technology is a really good advantage, and it does help the learning experience grow.
Director Dickman.
I was just wondering if someone could go over how you decided on this specific book. What made you like it so much?
Talk a little bit. Out of the 3 textbooks that we reviewed, Tamus came out on top. There was 2 books that were very similar. It's what's the name of the other one that was very similar?
Triangulo.
The Diaz. Well, Triangulo was the 3rd one that we reviewed, and it actually it was more of kind of a glorified workbook than a textbook, and it was very busy when you open it up, and it was just hard to really get a focus when you looked at it. So that was one of the main issues we found with Triangulo. And Abri and Paso was very similar to this textbook. However, that textbook divides into 2 books, one that has grammar and one that has kind of the other aspects of the course. And we felt this textbook did better at combining both of those elements. And although the AP exam doesn't test grammar specifically, having those grammar elements in it helps students, do well on the communication portion of the exam, and they need those, having those review options of the grammar within this textbook will be really helpful to them. So it just offered kind of the best of everything. And with the, we were talking about the super site and the technology, this textbook is the best by far in that aspect.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right. Well, thank you very much. Sí, es la verdad. We'll move on to diversity plan criteria. Director Kluhl, I'd like you to open this discussion.
Thank you, President Johansson. We started this discussion, we were going to start this discussion a month or 2 ago, and we ran late and postponed it to tonight. So I think that we can get through it on fairly short order. Before I talk about criteria, Mary, did we get copies of the state code for board members? Didn't get that? It's okay. A little bit of history. So we all arrived together at the same place. I think we've got 2 new board members. We've got new student school board members. So a little bit of history here, if you'll bear with me. And Mr. Ack's class, this might be a little trying for you, but it's kind of interesting, and it's certainly important. History, back in 1971, the Department of Education told the district, look, you all are having problems with diversity. You need to make something happen because you are approaching the point where racial equity is becoming a real issue, a real problem. In 1974, we took some steps to make that happen, and we approved an in-district open enrollment plan. January 75, the Iowa State Board of Public Education issues a letter to Davenport Community School District in which it concludes that the district does not have an adequate voluntary desegregation plan. So from 1971, when we got started on this, till 1975, you can see that there's a long period of time where we weren't making things happen. And my understanding during that time is that God bless the board that was up here at that time, because what they did is they fought against busing children out of their home area to other areas. The board did not feel that that was the right thing to do, and so they took a stand on that. But by 1975, the board implemented finally a voluntary desegregation plan as required by the state, and elements included an expansion of the in-district student transfer policies, a teacher transfer program, and our affirmative action program, which is now a policy. In 1977, after additional direction from the state board, we established Lincoln Fundamental School as a magnet school to further improve racial balance within the district. And I don't know if any of you went to Lincoln. You're aware of the program that we had going on there. In 1989, the Iowa legislature adopted the Open Enrollment Act. And what that was is it said, okay, look, you may live in Davenport Community School District, but if you think and your parents think that you would be better off going to Bettendorf, Pleasant Valley, North Scott, you can go. So the legislature said, we're not going to restrict you just based on the place that you live. If there's a better education, then you can go out and seek it. In 1990, the district went ahead and did a policy on open enrollment. But there were some concerns about that, and by the time we got to 2003, we revised our voluntary desegregation plan. We said, okay, what we've got is a situation here where we have a number of European Americans, a number of white kids that are continuing to leave the district. And what's happening to the district then is we're becoming less diverse. We look less like the population that we serve. So we said, we've got to do something to try to stop that. And keep in mind as well that, you know, the notes that I've got here, 150 students are leaving pretty much every year. Consider that that's over $1 million a year also that we're losing. In addition to the diversity loss, we're also losing that money. So we all know why we created the diversity plan. We created it because we wanted to have a diverse community. I mean, it's right in our mission statement, an education based on our diverse community. We believe it's important, and we wanted to maintain that. So we created what was then called a desegregation plan. And the desegregation plan said, okay, what we want to do is we want to comply with all the settled civil rights law that had been established up to that date, and we want to make sure that we comply with the Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court reading in 1954, which the key words, do any of the student school board members know the key phrase that came out of that decision, the Supreme Court decision, Brown versus Board of Education?
That was last year. We knew it at the time. It was a year ago.
so last year. It was separate but equal, is the phrase. And what it said is that, look, you can't have a school that's separate, that's segregated, and have it be equal. It just doesn't happen. It doesn't play out. It doesn't have the resources that a school that's integrated has. So we created that desegregation plan, but then in 2007, the Supreme Court said, okay, now look, you've all got these desegregation plans. You're trying to do your best to try to integrate your schools based on race, but what we're saying at this point is that schools can no longer explicitly account to race in terms of integrating their schools. You can't use race as the sole issue on which to integrate your schools. Well, that was a big change, because our entire desegregation plan and many across the country were based on, of course, race. We wanted to integrate our schools based on race. The Supreme Court said no. Supreme Court Justice Roberts said astutely, I think, that if you want to do away with racial discrimination, you have to quit discriminating based on a racial basis. It makes sense. I think that they moved in a direction that was leading. I think I've thought about this a lot, and I like the idea, but we'll talk about the criterion in just a second. That's where we're going to get to. But the main thing to remember is that at this point, race may no longer be used as the sole or the determinative character of the diversity plan. So we changed our plan to a diversity plan. And what we have now is a plan that uses socioeconomic status. What we'd look at is free and reduced lunches. And in addition to that, we look at free and reduced lunches, and we look at test scores. We look at achievement on standardized tests as a way to try to integrate our schools. So our plan up until 2008 had been strictly based on race, and now it's based on those two criteria. So where are we now? There, at my count, are 5 districts in the state of Iowa that have diversity plans. And remember, you have a diversity plan so that you can both integrate within your district, and also it applies to your ability to let students leave your district and go into another district. So our diversity plans in Iowa at this point, we have Davenport, which is based on SES and test scores. Des Moines is based on SES. Postville is based on SES and English language learner status. They have a large Hispanic population there. West Liberty, SES and ELL as well. And Waterloo has a system it's a cluster-based system based on race and socioeconomic status. Very interesting system. So we get down to criterion. In 2008, when we passed our diversity plan, we didn't have a lot of time. We were being pushed. The state was pushing us to make a decision, and so we didn't really have the time that we wanted to study it. And with our recent emphasis on diversity and affirmative action, it just seemed like the right time to consider the diversity plan that we have. And so specifically to the criterion. I guess probably the most direct way to go about this is to just stick with the facts, ma'am, which is an old television show, Dragnet, I think. I think, my position, the board is very aware that I don't believe that a student's ability to score on a standardized test is in any way, shape, or form the rationale that should be used to integrate our schools. I believe SES is a strong indicator. I think that on that basis we should have integrated schools. But standardized test scores are being abused, maligned, and misused all over the board. The federal government, No Child Left Behind Act, is using it to penalize schools, which is, in my way of thinking, absolutely wrong. They're penalizing schools that need help the most. And I think that our politicians are coming to that recognition. So I said, well, what can I do to try to support my case in terms of saying that we shouldn't use achievement scores to integrate our schools, just as we shouldn't use achievement scores solely to merit pay for our teachers. There's better ways to try to figure out how we should reward our teachers. So I said, let me go to the Iowa Code. And so I did. And what I find is that it appears...
Is this what you wanted handed out?
Yes, as a matter of fact, it is. Thank you. Thank you. Maybe, we got any extras?
There should be one for everybody.
Okay. Nobody? One for our students. So I looked at the code and look at it with me here on the first page of definitions for code 281-17.2. The second from the bottom is the definition of minority student. Minority student, in accordance with state law, says shall be defined by a local school board in its diversity plan and may include consideration of any one characteristic or a combination of any of the following characteristics, except that race may not be either the sole or the determinative characteristic. So the criteria are socioeconomic status, ethnicity or national origin, English language learner status, ELL, or race. Those are the criteria that the state says that you can use. In our diversity plan, we define minority students as those that are classified as needs students under the distinction found in Iowa's Accountability Plan for the No Child Left Behind Act. Those are test scores. Now, as we've talked about before on the board, we operate under what's called Dillon's Rule. And Dillon's Rule says that school districts are not able to take what the state law says and riff off of that to say, well, we know what it says, but we're going to go a step further and we're going to do this. State law says, no, school districts, you can do what we tell you you can do. You can't do anything beyond that. So what has happened is we have created a diversity plan that is contrary to state law. Now, the Department of Education approved our diversity plan. Did the Department of Education have the authority to override state law? I don't think so. So the situation we're in now is that we have a diversity plan. If my reading of the Iowa State Code is current, and I believe it is, we are in violation of state law as condoned by the Department of Education. I believe the Department of Education made a mistake in approving state diversity plans that allowed districts to do anything other than what the state defined as the criteria to be used as minority student. So that being said, perhaps we should have some discussion on the board.
Thank you for those opening remarks. Is there additional discussion? Director DeFau.
I respectfully disagree with Director Kuhl's interpretation of that section as reference to minority student. It doesn't say that these are the only allowable characteristics. It says that race cannot be the sole characteristic or determinant characteristic of your policy. I believe that the examples that are listed are illustrative and not inclusive. Our diversity plan at that time and most recently earlier this year was reviewed by both legal counsel and, as my understanding, the Department of Education was conferred with as well by our legal counsel. I do not believe that we are in non-compliance with state law. At the time, you mentioned the fact that there are 5 districts that even have a diversity plan. you fail to mention that the reason we're allowed to have a diversity plan is because we were so out of compliance in terms of desegregation or segregation that we were allowed to have a deseg plan in the first place. In fact, we were required to. At the time that we were required to eliminate race from that plan, our administration spent what was a significant amount of time running different scenarios to see which characteristics would most closely align with the outcomes that that deseg plan had, and they came to the conclusion that socioeconomic status and test proficiency were the two indicators that most closely gave us the results that the deseg plan did without using race as an enumerator. I remember at the time that you had urged us to adopt a third criteria, which is race, and that there was lengthy conversation, and I think even this spring we had a conversation with the people that were responsible for that policy, who indicated that they elected not to include race because at some point that would have been the determinant factor, even with 3 variables. And so they were more conservative, and in order to be in compliance with what is now federal law, did not use race as a determinant factor. I'm a bit puzzled in that we had lengthy conversation about this policy or this plan, a few months ago in correlation with open transfer and open enrollment between districts. And, it seemed to me at that time there was at least a consensus of the board to keep the plan as it was written with those criteria, the exception being of how it's applied to in-district transfer versus out-of-district transfer. So to revisit it at this early juncture again is just puzzling to me.
Director Sherwood.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with Nikki on the language. The way I'm reading this may include consideration of so forth. I think this may well be open to additional criteria other than those ones enumerated in the list. And, I think that this should go to legal just for a definitive explanation of that particular phrasing. But I, too, am very hesitant to put race in because I think that becomes a real point of contention, and when that becomes the determining factor, and I think we're opening ourselves up for a lot of contention. Am I satisfied with the district diversity plan? I'm not. I think I'll support keeping it as it is, but I want to go way past that. I think we ought to be investigating a lot of avenues for improving the racial balance and the socioeconomic balance in our schools. And I've mentioned before things like magnet schools and lots of things that have been successful in great portions of this country that we can work on and should work on. There should be a standing committee that works on nothing but that as part of this board. We don't put the effort into it that we should. But I'm not sure modifying 1 or 2 words in the existing plan is going to make a whole lot of difference.
Additional discussion. Director Crumwitty.
Director Kluhl, I'm not sure I heard from you exactly. If you were to modify the plan, would you include race as a factor along with socioeconomics? I guess I'm not clear what route you'd go. And then I'm also curious as to how would we even go about changing this plan at this point in time? I mean, what steps would we have to go through and take? I know, because I was on the board at that time, I felt very rushed in making this decision, and it was not an easy decision for this board to make, but we did adopt the plan that we now have. Now I'm curious as to how we would modify it, what steps we'd have to go through. I agree with Bill. I think we would have to get legal counsel involved with not only the interpretation of what you read here, but also what other steps we would need to take. So can you share your thoughts with us?
Well, I never did get to the criterion. I wanted to hear from the board on this issue first. So just to follow up on that with the comments that have been given, I would hope that the policy committee would take this for legal consideration, because the way I read it, and let me read it slowly, and it just makes sense to me. It's very clear. Minority student shall be defined by a local school board in its diversity plan and may include consideration of any one characteristic or a combination of any of the following characteristics: socioeconomic status, ethnicity, national origin, English language learner status, or race. That couldn't be more clear to me. And if we operated under anything other than Dillon's Law, I would say that we could decide for ourselves what were better criteria. We're not given that provision under law. So before talking about criteria, if the board wants to talk about criteria, I would hope that this would go for a legal interpretation, because we do have a difference of opinion here on the board.
Director DeFau.
And I certainly would support seeking a legal interpretation of the language. However, having been on that board as well, and knowing the diligence that was given at that time, the scrutiny that we were under, the efforts that were made to ensure that we were in compliance with what was required legally, I just fail to see how we would have existed for the last 6 years out of compliance, and no one, especially this spring when we had a lengthy conversation about this plan and the criteria, that no one would have said, hey, by the way, not so much.
There may well be a reason, but in looking at state code, it's very clear that there is not. So we need to find out on what basis it is that we have made a juncture from applying state law, state code here in Davenport.
We can certainly get to that, and perhaps that is really simply the next step. This diversity plan is really important, and I know that there are discussions about the wording in the plan that occur outside of this boardroom as we think about this, and and I think almost everything that's been represented here is exactly correct. It was a rushed decision, but it was a rushed by the board, but I think significantly studied by the administration and by the lawyers at that point. The discussion that we had earlier this year, I think, was significant, and this particular policy is difficult. It's more difficult than probably any other policy that we have to modify, because if we make anything, any significant change to this policy, we can't adopt that policy until we get it approved by the Department of Education. So if you can imagine, that's going to be a long, probably difficult time to move something like that through. But getting the legal interpretation of minority student and how that applies to the diversity plan and to the open enrollment policy is something that I can probably take care of in the next day or so. And maybe that should end our conversation for tonight, and because you seem reluctant to get into criteria or other aspects of the diversity plan until we have that clarified. And it's getting late.
It's getting late, but it seems like we get around to talking about these important issues too infrequently. I think that race is important. And the entire board has felt that it was very important, at least until 2008, when we took race completely out of our diversity plan, completely, whereas it had been 100%. Now there's not a mention of it. I have a problem with redirecting myself from decades of civil rights law that's indicated that race is important. And now we say nothing. Oh, we say we've got two factors that emulate race. I'm not very comfortable with that statement. So I think that I think just in terms of the criterion, I don't know if there's room for any further discussion if board members want to talk about it, but I'll state my case because I've thought about this a lot the last few days. I think that SES is entirely appropriate. I think it's what other school districts are doing. I think it's a smart thing to do to integrate our schools based on SES. Now, whether we use that alone or we use another criteria as allowed for by the state, Waterloo is using race. I think race is important. Now, but what I don't want to get to the point is like previous boards, I don't want to bus kids out of communities to go to schools. I think that's wrong. If we're to really attack the issue of racial problems, it's in community integration, not school integration. But here we're in a situation, just like the schools were with Brown versus the Board of Education, when the Supreme Court said, schools, you're going to be the focus of integrating our society. And so we were. But now the Supreme Court has moved on and said, okay, now we're colorblind. We're a colorblind society. Well, okay. So we want you schools now to lead the charge. You have the kids. You're the place to make it happen. So we're being used by the Supreme Court to institute this new view of racial harmony. And are we there yet? Is the lamb laid down with the lion? I don't think so. I don't think we're a colorblind society yet. We're getting there. We're moving there. And I think the Supreme Court decision is moving us in that direction. But as Supreme Court Court Justice Clarence Thomas said, he said, you know, slavery, segregation, and affirmative action are all racial discriminations. And he said racial discrimination is never benign. And he included affirmative action. And that's what we're talking about here to a large extent. So I think that what I would prefer, if we were to have criteria, I would stay with SES, and I would include race. Now, I thought about that a lot because I thought maybe we shouldn't use race at all. But I'm not thinking that we're at the point where we can do that. I think we are still just like the textbooks being part technology, part hard copy. I don't think we're free of our racial past at this point. I don't think we're there. So I think we need to offer that, and I think that there are ways to do it. And in terms of race being the determining factor, we could surely find a way to make socioeconomic status 51%, race 49%. It's not a determining factor at that point. I think there are ways that we could figure out to make this happen if the board feels racial integration is important.
Mr. President.
Director Sherwood.
Yeah, I want to make sure that we don't leave the public with the impression that this board has no activity on the area of racial equity in this district. We have sponsored and are paying quite a bit of money right now for John Q. Adams to go through our district to work on the issue of we call it institutional racism or personal prejudices that are maybe unknown among our faculty. Does racism occur in our district? Absolutely every day. And we are addressing that Could we do more? Absolutely. We've drawn the attention of the district to our demand that minority participation in AP classes be improved and the success rate in AP be improved, that minority students be encouraged and mentored to a higher level of achievement in this district. We have over and over again addressed issues of how we might increase our minority teaching staff and staff so that students would have representatives that look like them in this district. We do lots of things so that one word and one policy that in my mind makes very little difference in the lives of the average kid in this district is it might be something worth discussing for a couple of hours, but it is not to the level that we are attempting to do in many other areas. And once again, I would say that if this board wants to establish a standing committee on racial equity in the district, I'm all for it. I'll be right there. But let's don't make this bigger than it is. Thank you.
Additional conversation, discussion? I guess I've got to say that there's an element here. I believe that Director Kluhl has been talking, especially about what he perceives as wrong is the use of standardized tests in the establishment of this grading system that we use for diversity. And I think at one point Director DeFau said that that's one of the criteria that's used at the college. Is that correct? Maybe not.
I think what you're referencing is that underrepresented minority, when you're submitting federal grant applications, includes socioeconomic status.
But not standardized tests? Well, maybe I'm wrong.
You're recollecting incorrectly.
I am probably wrong. So there's something about that, and there is something about the diversity plan that is. I think it's a difficult plan. I think we adopted it, and I think it's an important adoption for the district. I've given quite a bit of thought to race as well, and I've thought about the importance of race, and in spite of what the Supreme Court says, I believe that race is important, and it's part of, I think, who we are. I don't think that it's appropriate to just say race doesn't exist. That, to me, doesn't make sense. I do believe that when we adopted that policy, though, we were given an awful lot of guidance. And maybe it was more than guidance. But it was pretty clear. We really had, I think, only about a week to make that decision. And there wasn't really time, I don't think, at that time, to have that discussion. So, for now, again, I will do the investigation with respect to the legal part, and we'll move forward from there. We have our diversity plan still, and then we will be talking about the open enrollment between districts, which applies the diversity plan. And I think part of the reason that this all did come up is our recent discussion on diversity, which included, excuse me, I can't even think of it. What's that? Yeah, affirmative action. Thank you. And we had a lengthy discussion about affirmative action. What can we do? What can't we do? And there are still some things there that I think we're waiting on. And I think that Director Kluhl's concern is even really surrounding that whole area. So I'll take the ball at this point, and then we'll bring it up at an appropriate later time. Director DeFau.
Just as a point of clarity, I recalled our conversation in scholarships for disadvantaged students grant to the federal government. If you were a graduate of a school district that had a dropout rate in excess of that of the state in which it was a part of, then you could be considered a disadvantaged student.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion on this item? All right, we'll move on. Thank you very much to policy review. Director DeFau, are you going to open this, or is Julie? We're talking about 602.01.
I was just peeking to see if Julie was still in the back of the room.
She's
Thank you, Julie. So for that reason alone, I think I won't suggest that we postpone this till a later time. In deference to your perseverance. This policy is before the policy committee for routine review. However, when we were looking at it, we thought that it was not congruent with the textbook adoption policy. That is also a policy of the school board. And so rather than come forward with a recommendation, we wanted to talk about it in the context of the textbook adoption policy and whether or not one or both should be modified.
I'm passing out right now what we use as a process during the adoption cycle. And so it is a several-year process which can be lengthened or shortened according to however your textbook adoption cycle is. You'll remember we were on a 7-year adoption and we moved to a 10. So when we did that, we just increase the amount of time that you're really implementing and watching your implementation. So for an example of that is right now our elementary reading materials are really at the end of their lifespan, and what we've done is brought the company back in to help us to focus our efforts to make sure that we're implementing that curriculum the way it's meant to be. So in a typical cycle, you first of all get your team together. You know you've got an adoption coming up. So you get your team together, find out who wants to work on it. You look at your standards and do the research on how you're going to make sure that you're really looking at what's out there. So then the next year you analyze your data. You start to gather your resources. You heard this team tonight say that they had 3 adoptions or 3 textbooks that they looked at. In some of these larger curriculum areas, they could have 10 that the smaller committee will bring these in. If you go in our office right now, you'll see that we have a lot of materials for math and reading elementary adoptions because we know those are coming up. So we go through those first and really identify what are the 3, 4, maybe 5 materials that we really want to dig into in more detail. So on a large adoption, then we'll do an extensive pilot with many teachers out there for a year doing, trying to teach different units and comparing those. As we get along, then when we finally get it narrowed down to this is the adoption, that's when we come to you. So that'll typically happens around March or April, and we'll be back for that. And then after the adoption, we really start to develop the units with our resource because the textbook is just a resource. And then we develop our units. The units consist of our standards and our benchmarks. What are our learning targets? What are our essential questions? the vocabulary, all of that. And so then the teachers that following year are ready to start teaching, and we do intensive professional development. We're getting much better at carving out time for that. It's always been a little bit difficult on these large adoptions, but a lot of staff development, and then you monitor the implementation. And so as you're beginning the process, you have to monitor very closely. Pretty soon, you're not monitoring as much, but with a 10-year cycle, farther out you get, the more you have to get back in there and monitor the implementation, because the easier it is to start to drift away from the initial intent of the curriculum. So that's why they sort of go together.
Excuse me, before we continue on, I hate to break the flow, but I'm always striving to have shorter meetings. I wanted to address the student board members, though, because this may go on for a while. You've been sitting there for a long time patiently, and I want to make sure that you feel comfortable in leaving whenever you have to leave or want to leave, okay? So, all
Do
right.
you have homework tonight? I'd imagine.
Yeah, and I know there's plenty of homework for all of you. So I apologize, Director DeFoe.
That's quite all right. Well, it still seems to me that there's a disconnect between a 5-year plan for curriculum revision and a 10-year plan for textbook adoption. And so my question as a policy committee member is, do we need to adjust one or both of those timeframes accordingly so that they work
So you would
better
go
together?
with a 10-year planning and development cycle?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think we had lengthy conversation at the time that we changed the curriculum, the textbook adoption policy, that it wasn't necessarily the best plan to move back to a 10-year review cycle.
Well, with all due respect, I'm really confident that the 10-year cycle is the best that we can afford. And if we were to go with a smaller cycle, I wouldn't be able to afford the adoptions that we have. The new elementary adoptions that are coming up are going to be very substantial cost.
But those adoptions were last made
like 10 years ago.
I think my son that graduated from college this year was in that first reading, treasurer's reading.
Yeah.
So I think that's more than 10 years.
Yeah, and I have a question, and this may be too much for this, but even though that cycle of 10 years right now is what we can afford in your language, that's based on past purchases of print and paper material and so forth. And I think at one point in the near future, we're going to have a discussion about a big technology buy. So how does that impact our cost of textbooks in the near term? For instance, if we do infuse a lot of technology in this district, why in 5 years shouldn't we review these materials so that we can implement the new technology and perhaps even save money over long-term adoptions?
At the secondary level, we really hope to be able to get to electronic text. At the elementary level, the materials that the children use are lots of manipulatives, lots of little books, lots of there's just a lot that goes along with an elementary adoption.
So you're saying we should have a two-tiered policy?
It would be something you could consider, yes.
Thank you.
Director Cromwell? I apologize. Is there any additional discussion to Director DeFoe?
I guess what I'd like to see then, if you could, I think the policy committee meets November 6th, if you could give us a recommendation as to how we should proceed and if policy 60201 conforms with both your expectations and needs.
Okay.
Then I think we could bring something forward.
Thank you.
Oh, excuse me, Julie, I still have something. You know, something Director Sherwood said a minute ago struck me, and as I read the policy, it says, for curriculum revision and updating of instructional materials. And I thought where Director Sherwood was going was, if we spend all this money on books right now, does it kind of preempt our decision down the road to use more technology? And I think the answer might be kind of yes. If we spend $500,000 or whatever it is, we may be, and we spend it on textbooks, we may be more reluctant in the future to say, oh, well, let's spend $500,000 on Chromebooks. And I know we're moving into this slowly, but I would say that my personal bent is to be more aggressive in it. And I want to be careful not to spend too much money on books and not enough money on technology. Any other discussion? Okay, thank you very much, Julie. Are there any administrative reports?
Just one 30-minute one, and we'll be finished. No, sir. Done.
Thank you.
Bill and I had a bet that we'd be here till 10, so
Well, you aren't
I'm
quite
good for
there.
15 minutes.
Are there any board reports or requests? Director Dickman.
I just wanted to say that I was very excited to attend the kickoff of the Greater Achievement Plan. The kids were really excited, and something that I noticed during one of the motivational speakers was the generational effect, that it was his daughter who was planning it, and I think that the steps we're taking now, we're also going to see generations down the line, and I'm really excited to see how that program goes.
Great, thank you. Any others? Director Sherwood.
Two things. First of all, my wife and I have the pleasure of hosting an international student who was in kind of a housing crisis, and so she's with us till the end of the school year, and she'll be our fourth such student. And I forgot how cool it is to have a kid in the house. It's kind of neat. So I now officially have a child in the Davenport schools, which is kind of cool. And second thing is that I passed this to you. I would like a board discussion on establishing an ad hoc board committee to study the use of K-8s in the district. I would like to be assured myself that this thing is a thorough and deep look at, because when we're looking at our funding shortfalls, we have to look at rethinking how we're doing business in order to accommodate those shortfalls at the same time without impacting student achievement, if we can do it. And I personally believe that K-8s is one of those possibilities. So I would hope that we can have a discussion and that my fellow board members will agree with me that it's something that we should look at in detail. Thank you.
Director DeFoe.
My understanding from Mr. Scott is that North Volleyball won their sub-state meet tonight, and West as well. So
Great.
good showing by both of those schools.
Good, thank you. Anything else? Director Kluhl.
Directors Dickman, Snyder, and myself attended the Iowa Youth Congress send-off at Kimberly Center. Sent the kids off again this year, and they're excited about going to Des Moines and passing their bill, which didn't pass last time, but which they feel they have a good chance of passing this year on cell phone use. So more power to them.
Director Crumwoody.
On a sad note, in the past 2 weeks, we have learned of the passing of two of Davenport's retired principals. Our condolences go out to the families of Mike Lake, former elementary principal at McKinley School, and also Harrison Elementary School, and also Mike served as a coordinator in charge of data in this district for a few years. Also, the passing of Bill Redco, who was the former assistant principal at West High School and then principal at West High School for a number of years. So our sympathies to both of those families.
Any additional reports? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 This meeting is adjourned. Nope, I don't think so.